What's the most rebellious thing you ever did as a teenager? For many, it was sneaking out past curfew, or perhaps an illicit tattoo. For me, it was simply needing to breathe. In my family, a single, draconian edict reigned supreme. I needed my twin sister Vanessa's explicit permission to seek any form of medical help, no matter how dire the circumstance. Can you even imagine such a rule? I was perched on the edge of the plush living room sofa, watching Vanessa preen and polish her birthday speech, her words flowing with the confident ease of someone accustomed to endless praise, when suddenly, a vice-like grip seized my lungs. The air, which had been so readily available moments before, became a thick, unyielding wall. My eyes darted to my trusty inhaler, a small, blue beacon of hope resting innocently on the sleek glass coffee table. But as my trembling hand reached for it, Mom's hand, swift and unyielding as a falcon's claw, snatched it away. Her eyes, usually so warm, were steel cold as she turned to Vanessa. "Vanessa, darling, does Illy really need this?" My twin, immersed in the luminous glow of her phone screen, didn't even bother to glance up. Her thumb continued its rhythmic dance across the display as she drawled. She used it at lunch. "She's fine," the words, laced with casual dismissal, stung more than any physical blow. "You heard your sister," Mom stated, her voice utterly devoid of compassion. The metallic click of my inhaler as she dropped it into the cavernous depths of her purse echoed in the suffocating silence. "No attention-seeking theatrics today, Ellie. It's Vanessa's sweet 16th, a day for her to shine, not for you to cast shadows." The implication hung heavy in the air. My very suffering was an inconvenience, a calculated affront to Vanessa's perfect day. This absurd, life-threatening rule had been cemented in place since we were 12. The infamous day I supposedly faked pneumonia during Vanessa's pivotal ballet recital. I hadn't faked it, not then, not ever. My small, desperate lungs had simply given out, leaving me gasping for air in the wings. But Vanessa, with a theatrical flair that would later serve her well, had vehemently insisted I was feigning illness, a mere bid for attention. And in our family, Vanessa's word was immutable law. Her narrative became the unwavering gospel, and my truth was simply overwritten, erased. From that day forward, every fleeting headache, every feverish flush, every terrifying asthma attack had to be cross-referenced, verified, and ultimately approved by the Golden Twin, our self-proclaimed medical oracle whose judgment trumped even the most undeniable physical symptoms. "Can't breathe," I wheezed, the words barely escaping my constricted throat. The dreaded whistling sound, that unmistakable harbinger of an asthma attack, was starting. My doctor, years ago, had described it as your body's alarm bell. Oh, the bitter irony. My body was screaming, but no one was listening. Ellie, Dad's voice, usually a comforting rumble, now boomed from the doorway, sharp and accusatory, like a sudden crack of thunder. He knew the drill, of course. "What exactly do we do when you claim you're sick?" His tone was rehearsed, devoid of genuine concern, a mere recitation of a familiar script designed to shame me into submission. I knew the script, the humiliating, preordained ritual. Ask Vanessa first, and then came the inevitable, soul-crushing follow-up. And what did Vanessa say? Vanessa, finally tearing her gaze from her phone, looked up with an expression of profound annoyance, as if my very existence was a personal affront to her peace. A sigh, loud and exaggerated, escaped her lips. I said she's fine. "Gosh, Ellie, do you have to make my entire day about you? Can't you just for once let me have my moment?" Her words, sharp and petulant, twisted the knife deeper. My chest was tightening now, a terrifying sensation as though an invisible, immense weight was settling squarely on my ribcage, crushing the life out of me. Each breath was a grueling, desperate battle, like trying to draw air through the impossibly narrow straw of a coffee stirrer. "Please," I managed to gasp, the word ragged and broken. "Need, hospital, Mom." Vanessa whined, a high-pitched, childish sound that cut through my agony. "She's doing it again. Make her stop, Mom. She's ruining everything." Without a second's hesitation, Mom rushed to Vanessa's side, embracing her, stroking her hair. "Don't worry, sweetie," she cooed, her voice saccharine. Then, turning to me, her voice hardened to flint. "Ellie, go to your room if you're going to act like this. The modeling scout will be here any minute, and we can't have you wheezing in the background." The scout, of course, a gatekeeper to Vanessa's glittering future, was paramount. My life was, quite literally, a footnote. I tried to push myself up, to stand, to somehow demonstrate the severity of my condition, but my limbs felt like lead. I had to grip the arm of the couch, my knuckles white, just to stay upright. A horrifying, undeniable truth was unfolding right before my eyes. My fingernails, usually a healthy pink, were beginning to tinge blue. "Look," I pleaded, holding up my trembling hands, fingers outstretched, hoping the visual evidence would finally penetrate their willful blindness. Vanessa merely laughed, a light, mocking sound that sent shivers down my spine. "She probably painted them blue, Mom. Remember when she faked passing out at my recital? She loves drawing attention to herself." My blood ran cold at the deliberate gaslighting. I hadn't faked it then, either. I'd suffered another severe asthma attack, but Vanessa had spun a tale for everyone, painting me as a jealous, attention-seeking sibling. My parents, swayed by her narrative, had refused to leave her performance, leaving me to struggle alone in the wings until the crisis subsided. Just then, the doorbell chimed, a cheerful sound signaling the arrival of the first party guests. Laughter and excited chatter began to filter into the hallway. Ellie, disappear, Dad ordered, his voice low and furious, his eyes flashing a warning. Vanessa's modeling scout is arriving. We absolutely do not need you wheezing in the background, creating a spectacle. The humiliation was crushing, but the terror was greater. I couldn't move, rooted to the spot by sheer physical exhaustion and the escalating crisis within my body. My lungs were working overtime, a frantic, visible struggle beneath my shirt. My chest heaved, each desperate intake of air pulling at my ribs. Every breath was a brutal, agonizing battle, and I was losing, rapidly. Mom, please. I rasped, my voice barely a whisper. I need hospital. Mom, with a sickeningly sweet smile plastered on her face, called out to Vanessa as if I were merely suggesting a game. Vanessa, darling, your sister is asking for the hospital again. What do you think, sweetie? Vanessa, a living, breathing obstacle, strategically placed herself directly in front of me, effectively blocking my parents' view. For a fleeting, agonizing second, I saw something flicker in her eyes, a fleeting shadow of doubt, perhaps even a sliver of fear, but it was immediately extinguished, replaced by a cold, calculating resolve. She's faking. Vanessa announced loudly, her voice ringing with performative certainty. She's just mad because Ted's coming. Ted, my childhood best friend, whom Vanessa had, with effortless cruelty, stolen away from me simply because she could. A new layer of betrayal, a new justification for my suffering. Conveniently fabricated. I knew it. Mom shouted triumphantly, as if my near-death struggle was nothing more than a childish tantrum. Ellie, stop this immediately. And then a horrifying, visceral cough racked my body, bringing forth not just air, but something thick, dark, and unmistakably crimson. I was coughing blood. Just as the first spatters hit the floor, Vanessa's best friend, Jenny, walked in, a bright, bubbly presence suddenly frozen rigid, her eyes wide with shock. Oh my gosh, what's wrong with Ellie? Nothing, Vanessa shot back, her voice quick and sharp, too quick. She's just being dramatic, as usual. Vanessa, Jenny stammered, pointing a trembling finger. She's coughing blood. No, they're not, Vanessa insisted, her voice rising, her eyes darting nervously. She stepped in front of me again, a human shield against the terrifying truth. Everything's perfect. Go help with the decorations, Jenny. But Jenny wasn't just a party guest. She was pre-med. Her instincts, trained and sharp, instantly cut through the elaborate charade. With a decisive shove, she pushed past Vanessa, her eyes fixed on me. She grabbed my wrist, her fingers instantly seeking my pulse. Her pulse is racing, Jenny declared, her voice urgent, professional. This is a medical emergency. We don't do medical emergencies without Vanessa's approval, Dad stated, his voice disturbingly calm, as if discussing a trivial house rule. House rules. What? Jenny looked utterly horrified, her face contorted in disbelief and disgust. Vanessa knows Ellie best, Mom explained, her voice surprisingly patient, as if Jenny were simply missing some crucial, logical piece of information. She can always tell when Ellie's really sick versus when she's just performing. Performing, Jenny exploded, already pulling out her phone and furiously dialing 911. She's in respiratory failure. Give me that phone. Dad, his face contorted in a sudden, furious snarl, lunged for Jenny's phone. But Jenny, holding it aloft, didn't back down. Mr. Lit, she said, her voice trembling but firm, with all due respect. Your daughter is dying. Vanessa, Mom turned desperately to my twin, her voice a raw, pleading whisper, still seeking validation from the one person whose judgment mattered most to her. Is Ellie dying? Vanessa hesitated, a tangible pause. The harsh spotlight of her birthday, which had been so firmly fixed on her, had unexpectedly shifted. Because of me, again, her face tightened. No, Vanessa said firmly, pushing down whatever flicker of doubt had dared to surface. Her voice was resolute, unyielding. She's not dying. She does this every time something important happens to me. That's when I stopped breathing entirely. The immediate, profound silence that followed was terrifying, a heavy blanket that smothered all sound, all hope. Ellie, Vanessa's voice, for the first time, wavered slightly, a crack appearing in her carefully constructed facade. Stop it, people are arriving. Vanessa, she's not breathing, Jenny shrieked, her voice a raw, desperate scream. She's holding her breath, Vanessa insisted, but her voice now cracked, betraying the sheer terror beginning to seep in. She's really committed to ruining my party, isn't she? My body, utterly depleted, finally surrendered. I fell forward, tumbling off the couch. The impact as I hit the hard floor should have sent a jolt of pain through me, but I couldn't feel anything anymore. There was only a profound, dizzying emptiness. Call 911, Jenny was already on the floor beside me, her hands clasped, beginning chest compressions. But Vanessa said, Mom started, still trapped in her delusional obedience. I don't care what Vanessa said, Jenny roared, her voice rising above the burgeoning chaos. More guests were arriving, their cheerful greetings turning to screams as they witnessed the scene. A cacophony of commotion, of terrified shouts. Someone was yelling, find her inhaler, quickly. This is Ellie's fault. Vanessa was sobbing hysterically now, her voice thick with self-pity. She always does this, always. Your sister is dying. Jenny screamed, her voice hoarse from exertion and fear. Help me. Dad, still clinging to the family's twisted reality, tried to pull Jenny away, his face etched with confusion and denial. Vanessa said she's fine. Through the fading darkness, a new voice cut through the pandemonium, clear and shocked. Mister. Lit, what are you doing? She's blue. She's actually blue. It was Ted, my childhood friend, his voice laced with horrified disbelief. The last thing I heard, before the world dissolved into utter silence, was Vanessa screaming, her voice shrill and utterly self-absorbed. You're supposed to be on my side. I woke up 3 days later in the sterile, beeping quiet of the ICU, surrounded by an unfamiliar symphony of life-sustaining machines. The doctor, a man with kind but gravely serious eyes, explained that I had been clinically dead for excruciating minutes. 4 minutes. 4 precious, irretrievable minutes where my parents, trapped in their horrifying loyalty, had waited for Vanessa's permission, her blessing, to save their own daughter. My parents, when they finally came, couldn't meet my gaze. Their eyes, haunted and hollow, drifted to the ceiling, to the floor, anywhere but my face. They just kept repeating, a hollow, pathetic mantra, Vanessa said you were fine. Vanessa said you were fine, over and over, as if those words could somehow absolve them of their monstrous inaction. But Jenny knew the undeniable, chilling truth. Ted knew. Every single guest who had witnessed the terrifying spectacle at that party knew. And we, the silent witnesses, the survivors, were going to make sure they all paid. The rhythmic beeping of the machines around my bed provided a steady, metallic heartbeat as I opened my eyes again. The doctor was standing there, his clipboard clutched in his hand, that same profoundly serious look etched on his face. He pulled a chair closer, the legs scraping softly against the linoleum floor, and began to explain, in hushed but precise tones, the full extent of my respiratory failure. It had been so catastrophic, he elaborated, that my heart had indeed stopped for those 4 agonizing minutes. And those critical minutes, without oxygen, meant that they now had to monitor me with excruciating care for any lingering, insidious damage to my brain or other vital organs. His pen moved across the papers with a quiet precision as he meticulously recorded my responses to his questions. Could I feel my fingers and toes? Did I remember my birthday? Could I count backward from 10? The answers, simple and fundamental, felt monumental in their significance. Then, with a slight shift in his posture, the doctor mentioned something else, something that made my chest tighten anew, but this time with a different kind of dread. He said the hospital had already flagged my case, initiating a formal inquiry into... The doctor, his voice a low, somber drone, explained the grim reality that Child Protective Services had been officially notified. Why? Because a multitude of witnesses at the party, the very people who had watched my life teeter on the brink, had courageously stepped forward, reporting my parents' chilling, active refusal to let anyone call for medical help, even as I was quite literally dying. He elaborated that a CPS representative would indeed come to speak with me once my condition had stabilized, but he emphasized that the hospital, by stringent legal mandate, was absolutely required to report such an alarming incident, especially given the unmistakable evidence of medical neglect. There was simply no way around it. Approximately an hour later, my parents finally materialized in my hospital room. My mother, with a practiced, almost theatrical flair, immediately launched into a display of big dramatic tears, her face contorting with an exaggerated show of distress, proclaiming how utterly worried she had been. Meanwhile, my father, seemingly impervious to the gravity of my situation, repeatedly interjected, his voice dripping with dismissiveness, asserting that they genuinely believed I was just being dramatic, as I supposedly always was during Vanessa's important events. Their immediate demand, a chilling prospect, was to whisk me home. However, the doctor, a formidable presence, stepped in, his voice firm and unwavering, to deliver a non-negotiable directive. I required at least another week of intensive observation. Why? Because the cardiac arrest I had endured had been terrifyingly severe, and the specter of serious, potential complications loomed large. The moment the doctor excused himself to tend to other patients, a sudden surge of resolve coursed through me. My finger, trembling slightly, reached for the call button. When the nurse, a kind-faced woman, entered, I poured out my story, every painful detail of the rule that had governed my life since I was a mere 12 years old. This wasn't just any rule. It was a draconian edict demanding Vanessa's explicit permission for any and all medical care, a chilling prerequisite even for something as fundamental as using my inhaler during an asthma attack, or simply seeing a doctor for common ailments. Can you imagine? Access to my own healthcare contingent upon my sister's whims. As I recounted this shocking revelation, the nurse's eyes widened, a look of profound disbelief and dawning horror spreading across her features. Sure enough, the very next day, Jenny and Ted arrived together, their faces etched with a mixture of concern and fierce determination. They took up vigil on either side of my hospital bed, offering a silent, comforting presence, and solemnly promised to provide official, detailed statements about every single thing they had witnessed at that horrific party. Jenny, ever the meticulous planner and a budding medical professional, then pulled out a small, spiral-bound notebook. Inside, meticulously recorded, were all my vital signs from the critical moments before the ambulance even arrived, data she had collected using the medical knowledge gleaned from her demanding pre-med classes. Her foresight, her presence of mind in that chaotic situation, was truly astounding. Furthermore, Ted, with a grim set to his jaw, showed me his phone. On it, he had actually recorded snippets of the unfolding horror, including the damning footage of my own father attempting to physically restrain Jenny, his hand reaching out, trying to prevent her from making that life-saving call to 911. Their concrete evidence, captured in the heat of the moment, was undeniably powerful and irrefutable. Just 2 days after Jenny and Ted's visit, a woman named Gabriella Reyes, a social worker from CPS, arrived to conduct her interview. She possessed a remarkable blend of gentleness and an unwavering thoroughness, her questions probing deep into the mechanics of the medical permission rule and, chillingly, how many years this egregious practice had been allowed to persist. She meticulously documented, not just my words, but also the physical manifestations of past neglect. Her camera flashed, capturing images of the array of old, faded scars that marred my arms, indelible reminders of untreated allergic reactions that had festered and become dangerously infected. With a solemn expression, she diligently wrote down every single incident I could recall where Vanessa, with a casual cruelty, had actively denied me crucial medical care for a litany of serious conditions, agonizing strep throat, a bone-deep broken finger that had never been properly set, and even bouts of severe food poisoning that had left me weak and vulnerable. Each memory, each scar, wove a horrifying tapestry of systemic neglect. The following morning brought a beacon of hope in the form of Dr. Arthur Keller, an eminent lung specialist. He came not just to evaluate my chronic asthma, but to empower me. For over an hour, he patiently, meticulously taught me how to construct a comprehensive, detailed asthma action plan, a personalized roadmap for my health that, crucially, required no one's permission but my own to follow. It was a profound shift, granting me agency over my own well-being. He demonstrated the correct, most effective way to use my inhaler, emphasizing the importance of a spacer to ensure optimal medication delivery. Beyond that, he provided me with a small, invaluable device called a peak flow meter. This simple tool, he explained, would allow me to diligently track my breathing capacity every single day, enabling me to identify and address potential problems proactively, long before they escalated into dangerous, life-threatening crises. It was a complete re-education, a lifeline, really. 2 days later, my parents returned for another visit, but this time, their demeanor had taken a sinister turn. The facade of worrying was gone, replaced by an aggressive, relentless pressure. They badgered me relentlessly, demanding that I recant my statements, that I tell everyone, CPS, the police, the world, that I had exaggerated what happened. They insisted our family didn't need this kind of attention, as if my near-death experience was merely an inconvenient public spectacle. Unbeknownst to them, I had discreetly positioned my phone, hidden beneath my blanket, its microphone silently capturing every damning word. My father, his face contorted with a chilling blend of anger and menace, leaned in close, his voice dropping to a low, menacing growl. His words were a direct threat, a chilling ultimatum. They would make my life absolutely miserable if I didn't immediately cease cooperating with the ongoing investigation and return home, pretending, for the sake of their fragile reputation, that absolutely nothing had happened. The recording, I knew, was a crucial piece of evidence against their coercion. Trapped within the sterile confines of my hospital bed, tethered by 4 lines and oxygen monitors, I found myself scrolling, almost reflexively, through social media. What I discovered sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. Vanessa, completely oblivious, or perhaps deliberately indifferent to my precarious state, had flooded her feeds with dozens of photos from her Sweet 16 party. Each image, meticulously curated, painted a picture of unadulterated joy, as if nothing remotely traumatic had occurred. The captions, easing with self-congratulation, boasted about the best night ever and her amazing modeling scout meeting. The comments, however, revealed a subtle split. Some friends, having clearly heard rumors, tentatively asked if I was okay, knowing I'd been whisked away in an ambulance. Others, tragically, had swallowed Vanessa's narrative whole, echoing her claim that I was merely faking to steal attention on her special day. The sickening contrast between those perfectly airbrushed, staged images of celebration and my own stark reality for drips piercing my skin. Oxygen saturation probes clipped to my fingers made me feel physically ill, a profound sense of injustice curdling in my gut. Jenny, a pillar of unwavering support, dedicated hours, painstaking hours, at the hospital, meticulously transcribing every single detail of what she had witnessed into a super detailed official statement. Her account was not just observational, it was clinical, drawing upon her pre-med knowledge. She meticulously documented the chilling medical observations, the telltale cyanosis of my lips and fingernails, turning a frightening shade of blue, signaling a dire lack of oxygen. She recounted, with agonizing precision, how my breathing had completely ceased, describing the terrifying moments of absolute stillness. Crucially, she detailed the agonizingly long duration it took for my parents to finally, reluctantly, permit someone to call 911, a delay that had almost cost me my life. Once completed, she made several copies, delivering one crucial document to CPS and another to the police detective, who had been specifically assigned to investigate the full extent of what had transpired. Her resolve was absolute. She looked me in the eye and declared, with a fierce determination, that she would testify in court if needed, because, as she put it, what she saw was nothing less than criminal neglect that almost killed me. The following morning, Gabriella returned to my hospital room, a thick, imposing folder clutched in her hand. She pulled a chair close to my bedside, the scraping sound on the linoleum floor emphasizing the gravity of the moment. With a calm yet serious demeanor, she explained that CPS was initiating an emergency safety plan, a pivotal development that carried profound implications. This meant, she clarified, that I absolutely could not return home with my parents until their exhaustive investigation was complete. The question hung in the air. Where could I go? She then gently inquired if I had any safe relatives or friends who might be willing and able to take me in for a temporary period. My mind immediately flitted to my various aunts and uncles, but a quick mental scan brought only disheartening conclusions. They either resided too far away to be a practical option, or, more painfully, had always, without question, sided with my parents, perpetuating the illusion of Vanessa's absolute perfection and our family's flawless facade. Thankfully, Jenny had been texting me throughout the morning, a constant thread of concern and camaraderie. When I tentatively mentioned my predicament, the urgent need for a safe place to stay, her response was immediate and heartwarming. Without a moment's hesitation, she called her mother, who, with remarkable compassion, said yes without a single caveat or question. It was an instant, unconditional offer of refuge. Of course, the bureaucratic wheels of CPS had to turn. Gabriella explained the necessary, albeit lengthy, process. She needed to conduct thorough background checks on Jenny's parents and perform a comprehensive home visit to ensure their residence met all safety standards and was a suitable environment for me. This vital, if tedious, administrative hurdle consumed 3 full days of extensive paperwork and countless phone calls. A dedicated social worker eventually arrived at Jenny's house, meticulously inspecting every aspect of the home, confirming the existence of a proper, designated bedroom for me, and grilling Jenny's parents with a battery of questions about their work schedules, their understanding of the significant responsibilities they were undertaking, and their commitment to providing a stable, supportive environment. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of waiting and rigorous scrutiny, everything received the official stamp of approval. The relief that washed over me was immense, mingled with a quiet sense of triumph. Jenny's dad, a large man with a reassuringly kind demeanor, promptly drove his pickup truck to my parents' house, prepared to help me gather my belongings. My parents, however, made their disapproval abundantly clear. They stood rigidly in the doorway, their faces contorted with palpable anger and resentment, their eyes following my every move with icy glares. The air crackled with unspoken accusations as I, with a newfound sense of purpose, quickly moved through my room, grabbing essential clothes, treasured books, and a few personal mementos, each item a small piece of the life I was now reclaiming. It was a silent, tense farewell, not to them, but to a chapter of my life I was desperately ready to close. And my school laptop, the very device that had once been my only window to the outside world, now just another possession to reclaim from the stifling atmosphere of my room. All the while, Mom hovered in the doorway, her voice a desperate, pleading whisper, repeating that this was merely a grand misunderstanding, a tempest in a teapot, and that I should simply return to the familiar comfort of home, to where, she insisted, I truly belonged. But Gabriella, a silent, unwavering sentinel, stood firm beside me, her presence a quiet but formidable barrier, ensuring no one dared physically obstruct my departure. Across the room, Dad stood rigid, arms tightly crossed over his chest, his face edged with a mix of anger and what might have been genuine fear. He spoke with a somber gravitas, declaring that I was embarking upon a colossal mistake, one that would irrevocably shatter the very foundation of our family. Yet, his dire warnings, his prophecies of doom, seemed to bounce harmlessly off my resolve as I continued, with a strangely detached focus, to pack boxes, one after another, methodically carrying them out to the waiting truck. Upstairs, silhouetted against the dim light of her bedroom, Vanessa watched, a spectral observer. I could distinctly see the glow of her phone screen. Her fingers flying across the keypad, no doubt she was already meticulously crafting and disseminating her own carefully curated narrative of these unfolding events to anyone who would listen. Once every box, every salvaged piece of my life, had been carefully loaded into the truck, a new chapter began to unfurl. Jenny's mom, with a foresight and tenderness that brought a lump to my throat, had already transformed her guest room into a haven. Fresh, crisp sheets adorned the bed, and half the closet, a space larger than any I'd ever truly called my own, had been thoughtfully cleared, waiting patiently for my clothes. It was a gesture of profound warmth, a stark contrast to the coldness I had just escaped. The following week ushered in a meeting with the school counselor, Megan Watson. Her office, tucked away in a quiet corner of the school, was surprisingly small, yet it buzzed with a strange, almost whimsical energy. Every available inch of wall space was adorned with cheerfully colored motivational posters, their bold platitudes offering generic encouragement. On her desk, a simple glass bowl overflowed with an assortment of candies, a small, unspoken invitation to find a moment of comfort. She didn't waste time with small talk. Instead, she pulled up my class schedule on her computer, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she began to meticulously make notes. Which teachers, she pondered aloud, needed to be briefed on the nuances of my situation. What specific accommodations, both academic and personal, would be crucial for my successful reintegration? She went to great lengths to ensure I possessed explicit, undeniable permission to carry my inhaler with me at all times, a small but mighty symbol of autonomy. More critically, she secured the right for me to discreetly exit any classroom should I experience the terrifying onset of breathing problems, without the humiliating and often time-consuming need to seek prior approval. Beyond immediate medical needs, she also empathetically arranged for extended deadlines on all the assignments I had tragically missed during my hospital stay, acknowledging the immense academic burden. And in a gesture of profound understanding, she offered her office as a safe, quiet refuge for lunch if the bustling, overwhelming energy of the cafeteria proved too much to bear. It was a relief I hadn't realized I desperately needed. That very night, a text message from Ted buzzed on my phone, his words cryptic but urgent. He discovered something I absolutely had to see. My heart pounded with a mix of trepidation and a flicker of hope. The next day, we met at the coffee shop, a neutral territory just a stone's throw from the school. The air was thick with unspoken tension as he carefully, almost reverently, showed me screenshots on his phone. They were ancient, dating back 2 years, but their content felt shockingly fresh, like a festering wound reopened. These weren't just messages, they were a chilling glimpse into Vanessa's casual cruelty, a raw, unfiltered exchange between her and Ted. She had been laughing, actually laughing, about how I had desperately pleaded with her to allow me to see a doctor for strep throat, and how she had callously denied my request, purely to see how long I'd suffer. Her words, preserved in the digital amber of the screenshot, were a gut punch. It's so funny how she has to ask me permission for everything medical with laughing emojis, the casualness of the emojis, the lightheartedness she applied to my pain. Was sickening. Ted, with an incredible foresight and a quiet integrity I hadn't fully appreciated until then, had saved every single one of those messages. Even back then, he confessed, something about it had felt profoundly, disturbingly wrong to him. Without a word, while we still sat there, the aroma of coffee mingling with the bitter taste of betrayal, he forwarded the entire incriminating exchange to Gabriella's email address. He then promised, his voice low and steady, that he would willingly testify about everything he witnessed at the party, and about these damning old messages, should they ever need his sworn account. Dr. Keller, a beacon of patient understanding, scheduled yet another appointment, a session that stretched for over an hour. He meticulously taught me the proper use of a peak flow meter, a small device that felt like a newfound key to understanding my own body. He demonstrated, with careful precision, how to take 3 deep breaths and exhale forcefully into it, 3 times every morning and every night, diligently recording the numbers in a special, personalized chart. He explained the stark reality: a normal reading for someone my age should ideally fluctuate between 380 and 400. Mine, however, were stubbornly hovering around a dangerously low 250, a stark, quantifiable testament to the extensive, irreparable damage inflicted upon my lungs by years of untreated, neglected asthma attacks. He then guided me through the zones of the chart, each color a silent warning, a life-saving instruction, green, a reassuring indicator that I was stable, yellow, a clear signal to exercise caution and perhaps reach for my rescue inhaler, and red, an unequivocal, urgent command to seek immediate hospital care. For the first time in what felt like an eternity of grueling for years, I finally possessed the tools, the knowledge, and the autonomy to actually track the intricate dance of my own lungs. To understand the subtle shifts and urgent alarms, rather than being forced to passively wait for Vanessa to deign to decide if I was sick enough to warrant attention. That very same day, as if the universe couldn't resist adding another layer to the unfolding drama, someone anonymously sent me a screenshot from our school group chat. The digital conversation was abuzz with concerned queries. Is my name okay? We heard an ambulance came to Vanessa's party. Vanessa, ever the master of deflection and manipulation, had predictably chimed in. Her reply, dripping with feigned nonchalance, declared that I was merely staying with friends for a bit because I wanted attention, and that everyone should stop spreading rumors about our family. But, to my surprise and relief, a chorus of brave kids pushed back, their digital voices rising in defiance. They reported hearing directly from partygoers that I had, in fact, stopped breathing and had come terrifyingly close to death. Yet, Vanessa, relentless in her gaslighting, insisted it was all exaggerated and that I was fine. She then launched into her familiar, venomous tirade, asserting that I had always been jealous of her and that this entire harrowing episode was nothing more than another attempt to ruin something important to her. A few days later, Gabriella's number flashed on my phone. Her tone, though gentle, carried a new gravitas as she asked me to come to the CPS office. It was a small room, starkly lit by humming fluorescent lights that cast an unforgiving glare. She sat me down, her expression serious, and proceeded to meticulously explain the intricate workings of the entire investigation process. They were, she revealed, actively exploring the possibility of criminal charges against my parents, citing severe counts of child endangerment and egregious medical neglect. However, she tempered this weighty revelation with a sobering warning. This labyrinthine process could stretch on for months, demanding countless interviews, depositions, and grueling court dates. She looked me in the eye, her gaze steady, and asked if I was truly prepared for such a protracted ordeal. And if I fully comprehended the profound ramifications, the very real possibility that my parents could face actual jail time or, at the very least, a stringent period of probation if charges were formally filed. The weight of her words settled heavily in the air. 2 weeks after that harrowing hospital stay, I finally returned to school. Walking through those imposing front doors felt like stepping onto a stage under 1,000 scrutinizing spotlights. Every glance, every hushed whisper seemed to be directed at me, an unspoken narrative of what had happened clinging to the very air. Then, in third period, that all-too-familiar sensation crept in. My chest began to tighten, and I could feel the faint, insidious rasp of a wheeze starting in my lungs. But this time, something was different. There was no panic, no desperate scramble for permission. I simply, deliberately, pulled out my inhaler and used it, right there in the middle of class, without so much as a glance at anyone. The attack, a specter of my past, passed within mere minutes. A ghost swiftly vanished. My teacher, bless her understanding heart, didn't even bat an eye, didn't utter a single question. Megan, with her characteristic foresight and efficiency, had already briefed all of them on my comprehensive medical plan. It was a small, profound victory. Later that same week, a thick, official-looking envelope arrived at Jenny's house, its return address unmistakably from the hospital. Inside, neatly stacked, was a complete copy of all my discharge paperwork, including the nurse's terse, official notes. Reading through the cold, clinical medical terms was an unsettling experience, like dissecting my own trauma under a microscope, yet it was also profoundly validating. Seeing stark, unambiguous phrases like severe respiratory distress, suspected medical neglect, and the chilling directive, Child Protective Services notified due to parents' refusal to seek treatment, transformed my lived nightmare into undeniable, documented fact. The next page contained even more horrifying details, a precise account of my four agonizing minutes of cardiac arrest, and a clear acknowledgement of how Jenny's quick thinking and immediate CPR had, in all likelihood, been the sole factor in saving my life before the paramedics even arrived. At the very bottom, in the precise, authoritative script of the attending physician, was a final, damning assessment my parents had shown concerning lack of appropriate response to life-threatening medical emergency, a grave professional indictment, followed by an unequivocal recommendation for immediate CPS involvement. Then, on Friday afternoon, a new blow arrived in my inbox, an email from the principal. Its subject line hinted at trouble, but the content confirmed it. My parents, it stated, had formally requested a meeting. The purpose? To discuss what they called misunderstandings and rumors about our family's situation that were affecting Vanessa at the school. The sheer audacity. The blatant attempt to reframe their cruelty as mere misunderstandings, and to pivot the narrative around Vanessa's supposed suffering, churned my stomach. The meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday, and the mere thought of sitting in that same room with them, bracing myself as they tried to twist every painful truth into a convenient lie, sent a wave of nausea washing over me, but there was a lifeline. Megan, sensing my dread, had promised she would be there, a steadfast ally. She assured me, her voice firm and comforting, that I didn't have to face them alone, that I didn't have to. I knew I couldn't just turn away, even if every instinct screamed at me to flee, to choose safety over confrontation. But deep down, I understood this wasn't just about me. It was about finally bringing to light the harsh, unvarnished truth of what they had truly inflicted. Just 2 days before the inevitable meeting, Megan, ever the meticulous strategist, summoned me to her office right after the final bell. For 3 intense hours, we meticulously dissected every conceivable scenario, every potential emotional landmine that might surface. She produced a folder, surprisingly thick and weighty, brimming with documents on student rights, a veritable shield of legal protection I hadn't even known existed. Her fingers, nimble and decisive, swiftly affixed a cascade of brightly colored sticky notes to crucial sections, her voice a steady anchor as she calmly explained, in no uncertain terms, how my parents possessed no legal authority to compel me to leave with them, nor could they force me to affix my signature to any document. She even mapped out the conference room, indicating precisely where I should position myself closest to the door. A subtle but significant detail that spoke volumes about potential escape routes and a sense of control. She then wrote down a series of carefully chosen phrases, concise yet powerful, for me to deploy if their voices escalated or if they attempted their usual tactics of guilt-tripping and emotional manipulation. Her hands moved with an almost frantic energy across the papers, highlighting passages detailing the critical concept of medical autonomy for minors, especially in cases where abuse was suspected. Recognizing the emotional toll such a confrontation would take, she patiently coached me on grounding techniques, guiding me through exercises to regulate my breathing, counting each inhale and exhale, preparing me to anchor myself if the intensity became unbearable. Her promise was a bomb. She would be a silent sentinel, seated directly beside me, diligently documenting every single word they uttered. And in a gesture that felt like a lifeline, she established a discreet signal to gentle taps on her arm, a non-verbal plea for a break, assuring me that we would both exit the room immediately if I needed to. The very next morning, before the chaotic rush of first period, Jenny, with a determined glint in her eyes, sought me out. She handed me a crisp manila envelope, weighty with official gravitas, containing her meticulously compiled statement. I sank onto the cold hallway floor, the cacophony of passing students fading into a distant hum as I unfurled the 4 pages. What lay before me was a stark, clinical portrait of my own near collapse that day, rendered in precise medical terminology. She had meticulously documented my pulse rate, the specific, alarming numbers, and the erratic patterns of my breathing, all observed with a keen, professional eye. Reading her objective description of my own body, how my lips had become cyanotic, a chilling term for blue, and how my nail beds starkly betrayed severe oxygen deprivation, was profoundly unsettling. The language, drawn directly from her prompt courses, was dense with scientific gravity, transforming a terrifying personal experience into irrefutable, empirical evidence, making the entire situation feel even more terrifyingly real and undeniably serious. At the very bottom, beneath her unwavering signature and the date, was a brief but impactful note. Copies had already been forwarded to Gabriella, the social worker, and the detective spearheading the investigation. The wheels of justice, it seemed, were irrevocably turning. Wednesday afternoon, just as the pungent scent of sulfur from chemistry class still lingered in the air, I was methodically stowing my textbooks into my locker when Vanessa, a looming shadow of menace, materialized behind me. The sharp, resounding clang of my locker door, violently slammed shut, jolted me. Before I could even fully register her presence, her hand clamped around my wrist, twisting it with a possessive, painful grip. "Tell everyone you're fine," she hissed, her voice a low, venomous whisper. "Tell them this whole thing is completely blown out of proportion." I instinctively recoiled, attempting to wrench my arm free, but her nails, like sharp talons, dug deeper into my flesh, leaving angry, crimson crescent marks against my skin. You're ruining my life over absolutely nothing. She spat, her words dripping with self-pity and thinly veiled rage. When I finally, with a desperate surge of adrenaline, yanked my arm free and tried to make my escape, she seized my shoulder with such force that she spun me around, sending my books scattering across the linoleum floor. The bustling hallway suddenly fell silent, a tableau of frozen faces, as other kids stopped, transfixed by the spectacle. You've always been jealous, she shrieked, her voice echoing off the lockers. And this is just your latest pathetic attempt to steal attention from me. I, however, refused to dignify her outburst with a single word. That night, sleep was an impossible luxury. My thumbs moved with an almost compulsive rhythm, endlessly scrolling through the relentless, dizzying kaleidoscope of social media comments about the party. Each post, each fleeting thought pulled me deeper into the maelstrom of conflicting narratives. Some eyewitnesses, their accounts raw with disbelief, described seeing me collapse, my body turning a terrifying shade of blue on the floor, while my parents, shockingly, stood by, inexplicably embroiled in an argument with Jenny instead of rushing to my aid. Conversely, a vocal chorus, predominantly Vanessa's staunch loyalists, painted me as perpetually dramatic, suggesting I had meticulously choreographed the entire ordeal. A calculated performance designed to utterly sabotage her birthday celebration. Yet a solitary voice of reason emerged from my English class, a girl who penned a remarkably articulate, lengthy post testifying to previous, undeniably real asthma attacks I'd experienced at school. They were absolutely legitimate, she asserted, not the fabricated theatrics Vanessa so cruelly claims. The digital arena quickly devolved into a nasty, venomous free-for-all, with virtual factions forming, fiercely defending their chosen sides. Fueling the fire, intrepid online sleuths began unearthing and sharing screenshots of Vanessa's past social media posts, chillingly revealing her long-standing assertions of control over my medical decisions. The digital world, it seemed, was both a weapon and a witness. Thursday dawned with a palpable weight of expectation. I found myself seated in the stark, sterile conference room, a fragile but resolute figure, flanked by Megan's unwavering support on one side and the principal's stern, official presence on the other. My parents then made their entrance, accompanied by their lawyer, a clear declaration of war. My mother, with practiced precision, immediately dissolved into tears, launching into a well-worn lament about my supposed lifelong difficulty and propensity for exaggeration, a convenient narrative to absolve themselves. My father, in turn, repeatedly hammered home the perplexing assertion that Vanessa, of all people, possessed a deeper, more profound understanding of me than anyone else. They vehemently insisted that their draconian permission rule was merely a benign, paternalistic measure, a sensible safeguard to prevent me from rashly seeking unnecessary medical attention for minor issues. I allowed their carefully rehearsed, emotionally charged speech to run its course, a theatrical display of deflection and denial. Then, with a quiet strength that surprised even myself, I calmly, articulately, and without a hint of emotion, began to speak. I explained how this insidious rule had been imposed when I was nearly 12 years old, a time when a child needs the most protection. I then meticulously enumerated specific, harrowing instances where Vanessa had heartlessly, capriciously, denied me crucial medical care. I watched, almost dispassionately, as a profound shift transformed the principal's stoic face, his initial neutrality giving way to a dawning comprehension, a flicker of genuine shock. I recounted the agonizing 6-hour wait with a broken finger, a preventable delay caused solely because Vanessa was at a sleepover, utterly unbothered by my pain, unable or unwilling to grant permission. When I subsequently detailed the 2 weeks I suffered with an untreated strep throat, simply because Vanessa had contemptuously dismissed my illness as a fake ploy to escape her choir concert, the principal's pen, which had been steadily taking notes, began to scratch across the paper with frantic urgency. My parents' lawyer, sensing the tide turning, attempted to interject, but the principal, with an authoritative gesture, raised a hand to silence him. Please, he urged, his voice now imbued with a newfound gravity, continued. And so, with every suppressed memory now rushing to the surface, I began to pour out every single incident I could recall, a torrent of long-ignored pain and neglect. Later that very week, Gabriella called, her voice tinged with a weariness that spoke volumes, to recount her exhaustive interview with Vanessa. For 2 grueling hours, Vanessa had steadfastly clung to her fabricated narrative, adamantly insisting that I had been cunningly faking illnesses since our earliest childhood, an elaborate, decades-long scheme for attention. She had meticulously constructed a sprawling, entirely fictitious timeline, peppered with purported fake sick days and calculated attention-seeking behaviors. However, when Gabriella, ever the sharp interrogator, pressed for concrete specifics, for verifiable dates and details, Vanessa's meticulously woven tapestry of lies began to unravel. Most of her alleged dates simply failed to align with any recorded school absences, a glaring discrepancy that exposed the hollowness of her claims. It was then that Gabriella delivered the devastating coup de grace, producing my actual medical records from when I was 12. These irrefutable documents revealed that I had been hospitalized with a severe case of pneumonia, which, tragically, had gone untreated for such an extended period that it had caused permanent, irreversible lung damage. Vanessa, faced with this undeniable, physical proof of her cruelty, reportedly fell silent, her defiant posture crumbling. But even then, after staring at the damning chest x-rays that clearly depicted the irreversible scarring, she still, with a desperate, pathetic attempt at self-preservation, tried to claim she simply didn't remember that incident. The following Monday dawned, and the pediatric clinic, a trove of my life's fragile medical history, faxed over an astonishing 15 years of my medical files, a voluminous stack of paper representing a childhood punctuated by suffering. Dr. Keller, a man whose quiet demeanor belied his sharp intellect, dedicated his entire lunch break to poring over each page, his expression morphing from initial curiosity to one of increasingly profound worrying. What he meticulously unearthed was a chilling, undeniable pattern. 7 distinct instances where I had presented with serious medical conditions that had tragically progressed far beyond what would be considered normal due to egregious delays in treatment. What made this pattern truly horrifying was the chilling correlation. Each of these critical medical delays precisely coincided with something deemed important on Vanessa's personal schedule, be it a meticulously choreographed dance recital, a high-stakes competition, or a coveted social event. He then, with a methodical precision that felt both clinical and profoundly empathetic, laid out this damning pattern across his desk, each incident meticulously marked with a vivid sticky note, tracing the agonizing thread of my untreated suffering. By Wednesday, a mere 2 days later, Dr. Deller, an expert in pediatric care, had authored a searing 5-page medical opinion. It was a harrowing document, meticulously detailing how this consistent, horrifying pattern of denied and delayed care, orchestrated by Vanessa, had quite literally held the potential to end my life. Not once, but multiple times over the years, he fortified this powerful conclusion with undeniable physical evidence, including copies of my lung scans, which vividly displayed the permanent scarring etched by untreated respiratory infections, and blood work results, chronicling the sheer number of times my young body had valiantly battled and fought off serious, life-threatening infections, all without the crucial, timely medical intervention I so desperately needed: proper antibiotics. His report wasn't just a clinical assessment. It was a powerful validation, a stark affirmation that no child could possibly fake the kind of severe, undeniable physical evidence documented in my extensive medical history. He emphasized, with a professional gravity that resonated deeply, that the repeated, deliberate delays in providing crucial treatment constituted nothing less than clear, undeniable medical neglect. That very night, my phone didn't just buzz. It vibrated with a frantic, alarming intensity, signaling texts from both my parents. Their messages were a torrent of threats, each word designed to instill fear and pressure. They demanded that I immediately tell Child Protective Services (CPS) that I had been exaggerating a chilling attempt to rewrite reality. The consequence for noncompliance was laid out with brutal clarity. They would cut off my college fund, effectively severing my future educational prospects, and, even more terrifying, ensure I had nowhere to live the moment I turned 18. Dad's messages, in particular, grew increasingly venomous and agitated, a digital shout echoing his escalating rage. He hurled accusations, calling me ungrateful for challenging their authority and viciously claiming I was destroying our family over what he contemptuously dismissed as teenage drama. The hypocrisy of it all, given the life-threatening situation they had created, was nauseating. Without a second's hesitation, my fingers flew across the screen, capturing screenshots of every single message, preserving this damning evidence. I immediately, almost instinctively, forwarded it all to Gabriella, who had become my steadfast confidant, and to Ivy Serrano, the sharp civil attorney Megan had so wisely connected me with earlier that week. My heart pounded, a drumbeat of fear mixed with a rising tide of defiance. The very next morning, a whirlwind of protective action began. Ivy, with a calm efficiency that belied the urgency of the situation, filed paperwork for an emergency protective order at the courthouse. She explained, her voice firm and reassuring, that this route would work far more swiftly and directly than waiting for the often protracted process of criminal charges to unfold. This order, she clarified, would be a legal shield, unequivocally preventing my parents from ever again interfering with my essential medical care or attempting to contact me about the increasingly serious ongoing investigation. And, she added, a glint of confidence in her eyes, since we possessed their threatening texts as irrefutable evidence of coercion and manipulation, the judge would almost certainly approve it with the necessary speed. It felt like a fragile lifeline, but a lifeline nonetheless. That weekend, enveloped by the quiet comfort of Jenny's kitchen table, I embarked on a daunting, emotionally draining task. With a crisp yellow legal pad spread before me, I began the arduous process of meticulously documenting every single instance I could recall being sick, detailing what transpired each time. It was an archaeological dig into my own painful past. The first column was for the date, if my memory could retrieve it. The second, a concise description of what was physically wrong with me. The third, a chilling chronicle of what Vanessa, my sister, was doing that day, her life continuing, undisturbed, while mine hung in the balance. And the fourth, a stark yes or no indicating whether I had received any help. After 3 agonizing hours, the legal pad lay before me, 4 pages completely filled with my tiny, cramped handwriting. The accumulated evidence, stark and irrefutable, revealed a pattern so utterly obvious, so deeply ingrained, that it made my stomach churn with a sickening sense of realization. The chilling correlation was undeniable. Every single school play, every single competitive dance event, every single important social gathering on Vanessa's meticulously planned calendar coincided precisely with the time when I was mysteriously unable to obtain desperately needed medical assistance. I vividly recalled the agonizing time I contracted strep throat during her 8th grade graduation. I was forced to endure the entire lengthy ceremony, racked with a fever of 103 degrees Fahrenheit, simply because she, with a casual cruelty that still stung, declared I was faking my illness for attention. Then there was the unforgettable incident when I broke my wrist, a sickening crunch of bone as I tumbled from my bike. Yet, I was denied a trip to the emergency room until the following day, a torturous delay, because Vanessa was hosting a sleepover party, and apparently, my very real injury and urgent need for care would take the attention away from her. Each harrowing incident, each moment of deliberate neglect, earned its own damning line on my burgeoning timeline. And by the time I finally finished, the weight of the evidence was crushing. I had meticulously documented an astonishing 27 separate occasions over a span of 4 years where Vanessa, with the implicit or explicit backing of her parents, had actively denied me crucial medical care for actual injuries or legitimate illnesses. The sheer volume was staggering, a testament to years of systemic abuse. Just as I finished, my phone buzzed again, this time with a voicemail notification from Ted. My heart hammered as I tapped play, half dreading, half needing to hear what he had to say. His voice, though audibly shaky with residual shock, was remarkably clear as he recounted, in chilling detail, everything he had witnessed at the party. He described my alarming appearance with terrifying precision, my lips, a ghostly blue, my fingernails gradually turning a frightening shade of purple, and the terrifying, desperate sound of me gasping like a fish out of water as my airways struggled to cope. And then, he delivered the most damning piece of information, how my dad, in a moment of unimaginable callousness, had physically grabbed Jenny's arm, forcibly restraining her to prevent her from calling 911 for emergency help. Ted then revealed a crucial detail that sent a fresh wave of horror through me. He had actually been recording video on his phone for Vanessa's birthday montage's celebratory compilations that now held incriminating footage and had inadvertently captured some of the horrific scene. Most importantly, he had recorded my dad's chilling words, a phrase that encapsulated the twisted family dynamic, that they needed Vanessa's permission first before seeking medical aid for me. 3 days later, the stark reality of my new fight unfolded as I sat, a mixture of nerves and determination, in a formal courtroom alongside Ivy for the protective order hearing. The double doors swung open, and my parents strode in, flanked by a formidable, expensive-looking lawyer in a perfectly tailored gray suit, his very presence exuding an air of self-importance. He wasted no time, immediately launching into an argument that this entire proceeding was nothing more than a private family matter that absolutely didn't belong in court. He then leaned into the familiar, legally convenient assertion that parents inherently possess the right to make medical decisions for their minor children, a statement that rang hollow and perverse given their track record. The judge, an older woman with a discerning gaze, her reading glasses perched elegantly on a delicate chain around her neck, slowly looked at him, peering pointedly over the rim of those very glasses. Her voice, though calm, carried an undeniable edge as she delivered a rhetorical question that cut through his practiced rhetoric. Counselor, are you seriously arguing that one child should have medical authority over another child? The lawyer, momentarily flustered by the judge's directness, attempted to reframe their egregious actions as a mere parenting choice, a strategic delegation of responsibility. But the judge, her patience visibly thinning, cut him off mid-sentence. She then turned her steely gaze directly to my parents, her voice low but piercing. Do you truly mean to tell this court that you made one daughter ask the other for permission to use an inhaler during a severe asthma attack? A potentially life-threatening emergency? My mom, her voice faltering, began to stammer out an explanation about how Vanessa knew me best, a pathetic attempt at justification. But with every word she uttered, the judge's face seemed to harden incrementally, her expression shifting from judicial impartiality to one of profound disapproval. After a grueling 40 minutes of heated arguments and legal sparring, the judge finally rendered her decision. She granted the protective order, a significant victory, though Ivy's strategic goals had been for a broader, more encompassing mandate. The most profoundly impactful outcome for me was the judge's decree that I would now have full, unquestionable control over my own medical decisions, permanently freeing me from the need for anyone's permission ever again. Furthermore, a clear boundary was established. My parents would only be permitted to see me under the strict supervision of a CPS representative or another adult specifically approved by the court. The judge, her voice still laced with concern, confessed that in all her years on the bench, she had never heard of parents delegating medical decisions to a sibling and found such a practice deeply concerning as a matter of public safety and parental responsibility. However, despite her clear misgivings, she regrettably couldn't grant the full no-contact order that Ivy had hoped for, citing the current lack of more extensive evidence of direct physical harm. That very afternoon, a quick glance at my phone revealed the predictable explosion, Vanessa's enraged Instagram rant. Her post, a self-pitying tirade, declared that I had ruined her entire future. The specific catalyst for her public meltdown was the news that the modeling scout, who had previously shown keen interest, had officially withdrawn their offer after word got out about the chaotic and medically alarming events at her party. She, of course, was blaming me, accusing me of destroying her dreams with my attention-seeking dramatics, completely oblivious to the near-fatal consequences of her own actions. However, a quick scroll through the comments section revealed a welcome shift in the tide of public opinion. The comments were utterly brutal, a flurry of pointed condemnations from kids at school who weren't holding back, openly calling her out for letting me almost die. It was a moment of stark justice. I also noticed that several of her former friends had swiftly unfollowed her, a quiet but impactful statement of disapproval, including 2 girls from her competitive dance team. Later that week, Gabriella arrived at Jenny's house, not empty-handed, but carrying a thick, official-looking folder. Inside, she explained, was CPS's preliminary report a tangible culmination of their initial investigation. I sank onto the couch, a knot of apprehension tightening in my stomach, and began to read through the 15 dense pages. The report contained detailed summaries of interviews conducted with numerous witnesses who had been present at the party, along with professional assessments from the medical staff at the hospital who had treated me. Crucially, it also included insights from various school staff members who had noticed concerning patterns over the years, suggesting a long-standing awareness of the neglect. The language of the report was stark and uncompromising, employing terms like severe medical neglect and failure to protect, painting a grim picture of my home life. It further noted, chillingly, that neither of my parents showed any understanding of how dangerous their actions were, indicating a profound lack of insight or remorse. The investigators' recommendations were clear and unequivocal: continued CPS involvement with mandatory parenting classes and, most significantly, supervised visitation, only a stark indication of the severity of their findings and the deep breach of parental trust. 2 days after that pivotal report, I found myself in the downtown office of Reed Schwartz, the assistant district attorney. He was younger than I had anticipated, with a head of thick black hair, and an air of palpable tiredness clung to him as he began to explain the complexities of my case. While he affirmed that what my parents did was definitely criminal, he gently but firmly cautioned that proving they intended to kill me would be almost impossible. The legal threshold for proving such intent is incredibly high. However, he quickly moved on to more promising ground, stating that child endangerment charges were much more likely to stick, given the undeniable presence of clear evidence they put me in danger by denying medical care. He then asked me to embark on the difficult task of writing out a victim impact statement, a powerful document designed to convey the personal toll of their actions. He concluded by preparing me for the long haul, explaining that the case would likely take months to go through the system. That weekend, adding another layer to the convoluted legal drama, I discovered that my parents, in a baffling display of retaliation and denial, had actually filed a complaint with CPS themselves. Their audacious claim they were attempting to assert that Jenny's family was. The accusation itself was a venomous dart designed to paint Jenny's family as manipulative schemers, somehow alienating me from my real kin and poisoning my mind against them. The sheer audacity of it ignited a simmering rage within me, causing my hands to involuntarily clench and tremble. How could they utter such a monstrous lie when Jenny's family had, quite literally, scooped me from the precipice of death? My own parents, the ones they so loftily called my real family, had simply stood by, passive observers to my struggle for breath, effectively watching me wither and die. The memory alone was a potent fuel for my fury. As the tears of frustration and indignation began to well in my eyes, Jenny's mom enveloped me in a comforting, unyielding hug, a gesture that spoke volumes without a single word. Her voice, soft yet firm, promised me not to worry, assuring me that they possessed every single piece of documentation, meticulously organized and unimpeachable, to counter such baseless smears. And true to her word, a mere 5 days later, Ivy called with news that brought a wave of immense relief washing over me. The complaint had been swiftly dismissed. The judge, in his thorough review, had specifically highlighted that CPS had placed me with Jenny's family not due to any shadowy manipulation or deliberate alienation, but for my unequivocal safety. A decision firmly rooted in irrefutable medical evidence. As a sobering addendum, the judge also included a stark warning. Filing such deliberately false complaints could, and often would, lead to criminal charges for harassment. It was a subtle, yet powerful, vindication. The following week, a sense of cautious optimism buoyed my steps as I entered Dr. Keller's office. In my hand, I clutched my peak flow meter, a symbol of my regained agency and the diligently maintained logbook from the past month. I had, without fail, recorded my numbers 3 times a day, precisely as he had painstakingly instructed me. And there, stark and undeniable, lay the proof of my progress, irrefutable evidence in crisp black and white. My baseline, once a perilous 250, had surged to a robust 380. Even more remarkably, I hadn't endured a single serious asthma attack since I had finally been empowered to take my maintenance inhaler every single day. Completely free from the need for anyone's permission or approval, Dr. Keller's face, usually so medically stoic, broke into a wide, genuine smile as his eyes scanned the meticulously charted graphs. This, he declared, his voice filled with professional satisfaction, is precisely what we expect to see when asthma is properly and proactively managed. Rather than being tragically ignored and allowed to fester until it explodes into a life-threatening emergency, it was a quiet triumph, a testament to what consistent care could achieve. Just 3 days after that affirming appointment, the school's main office called, summoning me for a code of conduct hearing concerning Vanessa. A knot of apprehension tightened in my stomach as I walked into the conference room, where the principal sat flanked by 2 other stern-faced administrators, all positioned behind a formidable long table. Before them lay a thick, open folder, overflowing with typed reports and meticulously detailed witness statements from students who had observed Vanessa's aggressive grab in the hallway the previous week. The principal, her gaze direct and unwavering, asked me to recount the incident. I calmly explained how she had cornered me after chemistry class, pressing me against the lockers, and then grabbed my arm with such force that it left painful, distinct marks. To substantiate my account, I presented the photos Jenny had taken, vivid images of the still discolored Brucessa model canvas of yellow and green starkly visible on my forearm. They diligently scribbled down every detail, then inquired if this was an isolated incident. I proceeded to detail the pattern of her harassment, the numerous times she had stalked me between classes, the deliberate blocking of my path, her venomous yelling. All escalating since I had found refuge with Jenny's family. The assistant principal, with a subtle shift of her stack of papers, added firmly that 3 different teachers had independently reported seeing Vanessa continue to approach me, despite having been explicitly instructed to maintain her distance. They assured me they were treating the matter with utmost gravity, especially in light of the ongoing legal situation with my parents, and promised a decision within 2 days. The weight of that ongoing legal situation seemed to hang heavy in the air, transforming the school's response from a routine disciplinary action into something far more significant. That very night, around 11 p.m., my phone vibrated with an incoming voice message. The caller ID displayed Vanessa's number, and a flicker of annoyance almost led me to delete it and listen. But its strange, compelling intuition urged me to press play. Her voice, when it finally began, was a fragile, trembling whisper, punctuated by ragged, choked sobs. She confessed, in a rush of desperate words, that she knew I was genuinely sick at the party, recognized the gravity of my condition. Yet, in the next breath, she admitted she simply couldn't allow my near-death emergency to ruin her big moment with the modeling scout. Her voice spiraled into a panicked explanation of seeing me turning blue, and how she needed it to be fake it desperate. Twisted self-preservation mechanism so she wouldn't have to feel guilty about her desperate desire for the party to be utterly perfect. She claimed she never meant for me to actually die, a hollow, self-serving caveat, but conceded she simply couldn't admit she was wrong in front of everyone, as her words. Drenched in self-pity and thinly veiled regret, tumbled out, my own hands began to tremble uncontrollably, a visceral reaction to the chilling admission. She knew I was dying. And she chose to lie about it anyway, sacrificing my life for her vanity. The sheer enormity of her callousness sent a cold shiver down my spine. Without a moment's hesitation, I saved the incriminating voice message in 3 separate locations on my phone, then uploaded it to my laptop, securing its existence. Within minutes, I had forwarded copies to both Ivy and Gabriella, knowing instinctively that this one audio file changed everything Vanessa had, in her own frantic, tear-filled confession. Just admitted to knowingly denying me crucial medical care during a life-threatening emergency that had, quite literally, brought me to the very brink of death. The implications were staggering, monumental. The next morning, as if on cue, Dr. Keller called. His voice carried a new gravity as he informed me he had completed writing his formal, comprehensive letter for the criminal case. He proceeded to read key excerpts to me over the phone, detailing, in no uncertain terms, how the deliberate denial of asthma medication during an acute, severe attack constituted a grave form of medical neglect with potentially fatal consequences. He didn't shy away from using precise, chilling medical terminology, respiratory failure, cardiac arrest terms that painted a clinical, undeniable picture of just how critically serious my ordeal had truly been. He also confirmed that he had already dispatched copies to read and was fully prepared to testify as an expert witness if the case required his medical authority. 2 days later, Reed himself called, catching me while I was diligently working on homework at Jenny's cozy kitchen table. His tone was professional, yet carried a definite weight. He explained that all the collected evidence had been meticulously reviewed, with particular emphasis on Vanessa's newly acquired voice message, which had proven to be a pivotal piece. Based on this overwhelming evidence, they were officially moving forward with misdemeanor child endangerment charges against my parents. He clarified that felony charges, while initially considered, were deemed unlikely to stick due to the immense difficulty in definitively proving direct intent to harm. However, he stressed that these misdemeanor charges were far from insignificant. They carried very real, tangible consequences. My parents, he informed me, would be compelled to appear in court and, theoretically, could face up to a year in jail, though he conceded that such an outcome was improbable for first-time offenders. He then paused, asking if I was okay with this level of accountability. My response was immediate and firm. Yes, I said, a faint sense of justice settling in. Because it's unequivocally better than nothing. The following week brought yet another significant meeting, a CPS case conference, at their downtown office. Gabriella was present, accompanied by 2 of her supervisors, and the discussion revolved around the precarious next steps for my complex case. Their initial suggestion involved family therapy, coupled with continued supervision, once the criminal proceedings against my parents had finally concluded. But the idea sent a jolt of unease through me. I voiced my reservations, explaining, with as much calm as I could muster, that I simply did not feel safe participating in therapy with individuals who hadn't even begun to admit, let alone acknowledge, doing anything wrong. I elaborated on how my parents, stubbornly entrenched in their denial, still insisted they were merely following house rules and, incredulously, saw no problem with their actions. The supervisors exchanged a knowing glance, a silent acknowledgement of the validity of my concerns. They readily agreed to postpone and revisit the idea of therapy until after the criminal case had wrapped up. They affirmed that my physical and emotional safety was their paramount concern, recognizing that forcing therapy before my parents genuinely accepted responsibility for their actions could, paradoxically, inflict far more psychological harm than any potential good. Later that same week, Megan, the school's compassionate counselor, called me into her office to collaboratively work on what she termed an accommodations plan. Her desk was a flurry of official forms, each designed to guarantee my unwavering access to my vital medication within the school environment. Together, we meticulously documented that I would henceforth be allowed to leave any class without requiring prior permission or explanation if I experienced any breathing difficulties. She further stipulated that I could carry my inhaler at all times, a constant source of reassurance, and use it whenever necessary without the demeaning need to ask anyone for permission first. She went to great lengths to ensure that no teacher, under any circumstances, could question or deny these essential and life-saving accommodations no matter what the circumstances. She didn't just tell me, she ensured official records existed, filing comprehensive copies with the school nurse, a bastion of medical support, and every single one of my teachers, ensuring no one could claim ignorance. More than that, she gave me a laminated card, a tangible symbol of my protection, to carry with me at all times, clearly outlining my rights and the protocols to follow should anyone challenge them. It was a pocket-sized shield, empowering me with knowledge. That same weekend, the screen of my phone lit up with a text from Ted, a hesitant yet hopeful inquiry asking if we could finally talk about the impending criminal hearing. The weight of that message hung in the air, a silent acknowledgement of the seriousness of the situation. We agreed to meet at a cozy coffee shop nestled inconspicuously near school, choosing a secluded corner table where the hum of the espresso machine and the murmur of other conversations offered a cloak of privacy, allowing us to delve into the sensitive details of the past. He began, his voice laced with a mixture of guilt and resolve, explaining his desire to testify about the harrowing events he witnessed at the party. Yet, a shadow of uncertainty crossed his face as he asked, "But I don't know if you even want me involved." After everything, our subsequent conversation was undeniably awkward, fraught with the lingering tension of unspoken truths. We peeled back the layers of how Vanessa had masterfully manipulated him, too, through a cunning web of lies, painting me as perpetually jealous and unnecessarily dramatic, a caricature designed to alienate me from anyone close to her. He pulled out his phone, the glowing screen revealing a series of damning texts where she'd meticulously, insidiously, convinced him over the years that my genuine struggles with illness were nothing more than elaborate bids for attention. It was a cruel betrayal, a stark reminder of her pervasive deceit. We then shifted our focus, agreeing that his testimony, vital as it was, needed to be laser-focused on the undeniable facts of what transpired at the party. Concrete, irrefutable details like the alarming sight of my blue lips, a clear indication of a medical emergency, and the shocking image of my father attempting to physically restrain Jenny from making that crucial 911 call. This conversation, despite its discomfort and the raw emotions it stirred, was undeniably necessary. We both understood, with a profound sense of gravity, that his objective account, stripped of any emotional embellishment, could be the linchpin that significantly strengthened the case against my parents. Just a few days shy of the hearing, I found myself in the reassuring, professionally appointed confines of Ivy's downtown office, joined by Gabriella. I articulated my earnest desire to testify at the criminal hearing, but with a crucial distinction. I don't want to speak as a victim, I emphasized. I want to speak as someone simply telling the unwavering truth about what happened to me. This was about reclaiming my narrative, stepping out of the shadow of vulnerability and into the light of absolute honesty. They listened intently, then began helping me meticulously practice what I would say, carefully crafting my statement in a way that empowered me, ensuring I never felt weak or broken, but rather strong and resolute. Gabriella, with her sharp legal mind, constantly reminded me to adhere strictly to the verifiable facts, like a meticulous historian presenting undeniable evidence. Ivy, ever the compassionate guide, showed me invaluable techniques for maintaining my composure, demonstrating how to anchor myself and stay calm if the defense attorney, as they undoubtedly would, attempted to destabilize or upset me with aggressive questioning. We reviewed my statement, word for word, again and again, like a performer rehearsing a demanding role, until I could deliver it with unwavering clarity, without the slightest tremor in my voice, without succumbing to tears. The following week, the mundane setting of gym class became an unexpected arena for a triumph of self-management. I felt that familiar, constricting tightness began to coil in my chest, a sensation that once heralded imminent panic. But this time, instead of succumbing to fear's icy grip, I acted. With a calmness born of practice, I immediately reached for my inhaler, its smooth, cool plastic of familiar comfort, and then pulled out my peak flow meter, a small, yet powerful, sentinel of my lung health. I blew into it with a focused breath, watching the numbers on the gauge as they began to dip, a concerning trend, but thankfully not yet plummeting to dangerously low levels. Without hesitation, I calmly informed the teacher that I needed to sit out, not as a sign of weakness, but to actively monitor my breathing. 5 minutes later, as a precautionary measure, I used my inhaler again, meticulously checking my peak flow every few minutes thereafter. Within a mere quarter of an hour, a testament to vigilance and immediate action, my numbers had resiliently climbed back up to safe levels, and the suffocating tightness had completely dissipated. Leaving behind a profound sense of relief, the gym teacher, who had observed my entire, self-possessed response, approached me afterwards, her expression one of genuine admiration. "You handled that perfectly," she commended, clearly impressed by my composure and preparedness. As I carefully slid my inhaler back into my pocket, a profound realization washed over me, a feeling as expansive and liberating as a deep breath of fresh air. I wasn't scared anymore. Why? Because I had finally seized control, not just over my medical condition, but over my own body and my own health. 3 days later, the fragile peace I found was shattered. As I walked towards my car after school, the sight of my parents' familiar SUV brazenly parked right beside Jenny's unassuming Honda sent a visceral jolt through me. My stomach plummeted, a sickening lurch as they emerged from their vehicle and began advancing towards me. Their determined steps a blatant violation of the protective order that explicitly forbade them from coming within 50 feet. My hand almost instinctively flew to my phone, dialing the compliance line number that Ivy, with her foresight, had insisted I save. I narrated my exact location, my voice steady despite the rapid thumping of my heart, as my parents continued their relentless approach. My mother's face was a mask of theatrical tears, while my father, with a deceptive calm, repeatedly insisted they just wanted to talk for 5 minutes. But I held my ground, remaining firmly on the phone, slowly backing away towards the sanctuary of the school entrance. It felt like an eternity, but within 4 minutes, a reassuring blur of motion, two security guards came sprinting out, strategically positioning themselves between me and my parents, forming an immediate, formidable barrier. One of them, efficiently and without a word, began documenting the entire tense encounter on his phone. My dad, still attempting to assert his authority, tried to explain, "We're her parents. We have a right to see her." The guard, however, remained impassive, calmly informing him about the protective order meticulously on file with the school. The message was unequivocal. They had to leave immediately, or campus police would be called, resulting in their arrest for both trespassing and a serious violation of a court order. The very next morning, Vanessa, a storm of fury, cornered me at my locker, her voice escalating into a shrill scream. She launched into a tirade about how I had destroyed her entire life and, more specifically, cost her the modeling contract she'd worked tirelessly for since middle school, as if my very existence was a personal affront to her ambitions. Students nearby, drawn by the dramatic spectacle, paused to stare opally as she continued to shriek, accusing me of being jealous and wanting to ruin every good thing in her life, just like I'd always done. This time, however, I refused to engage in her verbal battle. Instead of offering a single word in retaliation, I simply, deliberately raised my phone, its camera lenses silent, and blinking witness, and began recording her unrestrained outburst. She continued to rage, completely oblivious to my action, screaming about how everyone at the school now thought she was a monster, when she finally, dramatically, stormed off. Leaving a vacuum of silence in her wake, I walked directly to the principal's office. Without preamble, I showed him the damning video, coolly explaining that Megan had imparted the crucial lesson of documenting everything. He listened intently, then, with a sigh of weary resignation, informed me that this was, incredibly, the third incident report involving Vanessa that week alone. Without further ado, he called an emergency disciplinary hearing for that very afternoon. The hearing itself was a grueling 2-hour session, a serious tribunal composed of the principal, vice principal, and 3 teachers. They meticulously reviewed every single documented incident, a mountain of evidence that painted a clear picture of Vanessa's escalating bullying. This included, crucially, witness statements from several students who had observed Vanessa cornering me multiple times, her aggressive behavior a pattern rather than an isolated event. The decision was swift and impactful. Vanessa was suspended from all extracurricular activities, a significant blow to her social standing and future prospects, encompassing both the prestigious student council and the competitive debate team. Furthermore, an official no-contact order was immediately issued, a firm legal boundary meaning she could not, under any circumstances, approach me anywhere on school property. The stakes were made crystal clear. If she violated this order even once, she would face immediate suspension and the very real possibility of expulsion. For me, this wasn't just a punishment for Vanessa. It was a profound, liberating realization that I finally had one place in my school where I could feel genuinely safe from her relentless torment. That same weekend, Reed called, his voice professional yet empathetic, to inform me that he had officially filed the misdemeanor child endangerment charges against my parents. He explained that the next crucial step was for me to prepare a victim impact statement for the court, a document designed to convey the personal toll of their actions. I immediately scheduled a meeting with Ivy at her downtown office, where we embarked on a meticulous, almost cathartic, 3-hour session of writing and rewriting my statement. Our goal was absolute precision, to focus solely on the unvarnished facts, carefully extracting the essence of my experience without allowing raw emotion to overshadow the objective truth. We then moved on to practice, a rigorous regimen of me reading the statement aloud, over and over. Ivy, acting as my coach, timed my delivery, gently guiding me to slow down whenever I, reflexively, began to rush through the most emotionally challenging parts. She imparted invaluable public speaking techniques, teaching me to strategically pause and take a steady breath between sections, and, crucially, to lift my gaze and make direct eye contact with the judge instead of burying my eyes in the paper, thereby conveying a sense of unwavering sincerity and strength. 2 weeks later, a blend of apprehension and resolve, we all made our way to the imposing courthouse for the arraignment, the formal proceeding where my parents would finally enter their plea. They stood at the defendant's table, a stark, almost surreal image, flanked by their lawyer, as the prosecutor methodically read the chilling charges, knowingly denying essential medical care to a minor in their custody. When the judge, his voice resonating with gravitas, finally asked for their plea, they both uttered, in voices so small, so utterly diminished, that I had never heard them sound so fragile. Not guilty. It was a moment of profound denial, a refusal to acknowledge the stark reality of their actions. In the gallery behind them, I spotted Vanessa, a ghost of her former self. She looked pale, almost fragile, appearing much younger than her 16 years, her usually impeccably styled hair pulled back in a simple and adorned ponytail. A stark contrast to her typically perfect, carefully constructed image. Curls. She kept staring at me with an intensity that felt both unnerving and profoundly revelatory, as if, for the very first time, her eyes truly registered me not as an extension of herself, or merely the twin who was supposed to stay in her shadow, but as an independent, actual person. It was a gaze devoid of the familiar disdain, replaced by something akin to bewildered recognition. The judge, with a stern, unwavering voice, scheduled the formal trial for a mere 6 weeks later, reinforcing the harsh reality to my parents that all communication with me, their daughter, would henceforth be strictly mediated through legal counsel. A tense month crawled by, each day a step closer to confronting the past. Then, I found myself standing at the podium in the hushed courtroom, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. My hands, despite my best efforts, trembled so violently that I had to clench the cold, polished edges of the podium, my knuckles stark white just to maintain a semblance of steady composure. I began reading my statement, meticulously explaining the insidious permission rule in simple, unvarnished words. I chronicled its chilling origin, tracing back to when I was just 12 years old and Vanessa, in a fit of self-righteous fury, had unilaterally decided I'd fabricated an illness to skip her recital. Oh, the injustice of it all, that a child's fabricated grievance could become the foundation of such cruelty. Then, with a voice that wavered but refused to break, I recounted the harrowing details of the party, pulling the words directly from my carefully prepared notes, the suffocating inability to breathe, the desperate, gasping struggle, and the gut-wrenching betrayal of my parents' refusal to intervene. Even as my lips and fingertips began to turn a terrifying, unmistakable blue. My voice cracked, raw with emotion. When I reached the unimaginable part, for excruciating minutes, I lay dying. But the momentum of truth propelled me forward, each word bolstering my resolve, until I was speaking with an undeniable clarity, articulating the precise, devastating extent of what they had truly done to me. The courtroom was blanketed in an absolute, suffocating silence, broken only by the steady rhythm of my own voice and the quiet, almost imperceptible sobs emanating from my mother at the defendant's table. Was it remorse I heard, or merely self-pity for her own predicament? 3 grueling days of testimony followed, each revelation peeling back another layer of their neglect. Jenny, unwavering in her loyalty, delivered her account, followed by Ted, who spoke with a quiet, undeniable sincerity. Several party guests, their faces etched with remembered horror, corroborated the events. And then came Dr. Keller, whose medical evidence was irrefutable, painting a stark, clinical picture of my scarred lungs, a horrifying tapestry woven from years of untreated infections, a direct consequence of their deliberate inaction. Faced with this overwhelming mountain of evidence, my parents' lawyer, visibly cornered, requested an urgent meeting with the prosecutor. They ultimately hammered out a plea deal, a compromise that felt both bittersweet and utterly necessary. My parents would plead guilty to a lesser charge, a tacit admission of their culpability, in exchange for 18 months of court-mandated parenting classes and rigorous compliance monitoring, thus sidestepping the very real possibility of jail time. Was it the maximum punishment they deserved? Perhaps not. But the weight of their official admission of guilt was immense. This criminal record, this indelible stain, would brand them forever, casting a long shadow over any future job prospects or housing applications. The judge, after careful consideration, approved the deal, but then, with a profound sense of justice, added a crucial, life-altering clause. He expanded my protective order, meticulously detailing, in precise legal language, that Vanessa, my twin, would possess zero authority, absolutely none, over any of my medical decisions, not now, not ever. This powerful decree firmly established that my health and medical care were my sole responsibility and an undeniable personal right, explicitly stating that any future attempt by family members to interfere would be unequivocally considered a direct violation. It was a declaration of independence, a legal severing of their control. 2 weeks after the trial finally concluded, Gabriella, my dedicated CPS caseworker, visited Jenny's house for our final intensive meeting. Her smile was one of genuine relief as she announced that CPS was officially closing the active investigation phase. They were thoroughly satisfied, she confirmed, that I was not only safe, but truly thriving within Jenny's warm and supportive family. However, to ensure my continued well-being, they would conduct periodic check-ins for the next year and had already arranged several therapy referrals, should I choose to pursue them, a thoughtful recognition of the lingering trauma. Before she left, Gabriella handed me a thick folder, meticulously organized, containing all the case documentation, a tangible record of my journey, along with her direct number, a lifeline should I ever need assistance again. That very evening, as we gathered around Jenny's kitchen table for dinner, Jenny's parents delivered a pronouncement that filled my heart with an overwhelming sense of belonging. The emergency placement period was technically over, they explained, but they wanted me to know, without a shadow of a doubt, that I was wholeheartedly welcome to stay through the remainder of the school year, and even all the way through graduation, if that was what I desired. Jenny's mom reached across the table, her hand gently enveloping mine, and her voice, thick with emotion, declared, "You become like a second daughter to us, sweetheart. We simply can't imagine you leaving now." Did I hesitate? Not for a single second. I said yes immediately, a heartfelt, emphatic affirmation. For even though we shared no blood ties, They had, in a mere 3 months, shown me more genuine, unconditional family love than my biological family had managed in 16 long, barren years. How could I ever leave such profound kindness? The next 3 months, infused with peace and belonging, flew by faster than I could have imagined. Suddenly, I found myself back in Dr. Keller's office for my highly anticipated follow-up appointment. I watched, a knot of anticipation in my stomach, as he pulled up my latest test results on his computer screen. His finger traced the vibrant, upward trending numbers. My lung function, once dangerously compromised at 60%, had surged to almost 90%. A remarkable recovery simply from diligently taking my medications every single day, just as I was supposed to. The improvement graphs, displayed in vivid colors, resembled nothing less than majestic mountain slopes, steadily ascending towards a healthier peak. He printed them out for me, a tangible testament to my progress, and with a gentle smile, explained how consistent, dedicated treatment had, quite miraculously, reversed most of the damage that had accumulated over years of untreated, agonizing attacks. He meticulously wrote out prescriptions for a full 3 months of everything I needed, ensuring I was well stocked with rescue inhalers for home, school, and even Jenny's car, a comprehensive safety net. Furthermore, he provided extra spacers and patiently demonstrated the proper cleaning schedule, crucial steps to prevent any future infections. The very next day, Megan, my compassionate school counselor, called me into her office. Her desk was transformed into a veritable command center, laden with boxes of folders, a buzzing label maker, and an aura of organized efficiency. Ready to build your fortress, she quipped, her eyes sparkling with encouragement. We spent 2 intense hours constructing what she aptly termed my safety file. This was no mere collection of papers. It was a carefully curated arsenal of empowerment. Medical records found their dedicated section, legal documents another, and emergency contacts a third, with meticulously labeled tabs for everything imaginable. From insurance cards to therapy referrals. She photocopied my protective order 3 times over, emphasizing the critical importance of keeping copies in diverse, secure locations, and patiently helped me scan every single document onto a flash drive as a digital backup. As we worked, she expertly steered the conversation towards the future, talking about college applications, and how many survivors, like myself, bravely leverage their unique experiences and personal statements not as burdens, but as powerful narratives of resilience. We delved into scholarship opportunities specifically designed for medical hardship cases, and she thoughtfully provided me with pamphlets for various universities boasting robust support systems for students grappling with chronic health conditions, making sure to highlight the ones with particularly strong programs, a path I had, quite recently, begun to seriously consider. That weekend, my phone buzzed with a text from Ted, a simple, yet significant invitation. Want to grab lunch at the diner near school? It was just the 2 of us. A deliberate sanctuary free from any mention of Vanessa, the trial, or anything that carried the heavy weight of the past. We settled into a worn booth, the aroma of sizzling burgers filling the air, and talked about nothing but the wonderfully ordinary, his latest soccer season exploits, the intricacies of my science project. It was an unspoken, yet firm, boundary we both respected, a conscious agreement not to delve into discussions about my sister or the devastating events of the party. It wasn't, I acknowledged, the same effortlessly easy friendship we had once shared as kids, building fantastical forts in my backyard. The innocence was gone, replaced by a deeper, more nuanced understanding. But it was honest, it was real, and it was profoundly appreciated. I noticed him, almost instinctively, checking to ensure I had my inhaler before we left the diner, and to my own surprise, instead of feeling annoyed, I felt a genuine warmth, a quiet appreciation that he cared enough to ask. Later that week, during chemistry class, my phone vibrated, a jarring intrusion into the delicate balance of my new normalcy. It was a text from Vanessa. I know I made some mistakes, it read, and maybe handled things wrong. The words hung in the air, hollow and insufficient. There was no actual apology, no explicit admission of her responsibility for nearly killing me. My gaze remained fixed on the message for a long, agonizing moment, my finger hovering, trembling slightly, over the reply button. A part of me, the old, wounded part, yearned to respond, to unleash years of pent-up anger, to force her to truly understand the depths of her cruelty. But then, a newfound resolve solidified within me. With a decisive swipe, I deleted the message, pressing send on nothing but silence. Because, I realized with a clarity that resonated deep in my soul, protecting my hard-won peace mattered infinitely more than getting the last word, or vainly attempting to make her comprehend the irreparable damage she had inflicted. That night, sitting at Jenny's familiar kitchen table, a fresh notebook open before me, I began to write. It wasn't a letter to Vanessa, or a plea for understanding. It was a personal statement, an unwavering declaration of boundaries and self-worth, explicitly outlining my needs, my rights, and my unshakable commitment to my own safety, a manifesto for my liberated future. I remember meticulously building that file, each word a deliberate, defiant claim. It wasn't just stating that all medical decisions were mine alone to make. It was a personal declaration, etched in my own words, an unassailable manifesto of autonomy. Who could possibly challenge this unyielding assertion now, I wondered. I had painstakingly listed every single legal document that buttressed this truth, a formidable arsenal of proof from the protective order that served as an impenetrable shield, to the damning CPS findings, and finally, the undeniable outcome of the criminal case. Each piece of paper wasn't just a record. It was a brick in the legal fortress I was building around myself. And as I compiled it, I felt the sheer, exhilarating power of putting my medical autonomy in writing, a tangible, irrefutable document ensuring no one could ever question it, ever again. This deeply personal statement, a testament to my fight for sovereignty over my own body, spanned 3 comprehensive pages, and I made 5 distinct copies, each one a safeguard. One found its place in the quiet security of my backpack, another was tucked away in my locker, a third nestled securely within my safety file. A fourth was delivered directly to the doctor's office for their records, and the final one, a symbol of trust, was entrusted to Megan. This meticulous distribution ensured I would never, under any circumstances, be without immediate proof of my rights, a constant, tangible shield against any potential challenge. Looking back at my life, a mere 3 months after the harrowing experience of dying for 4 minutes, yes, 4 minutes, the transformation was nothing short of miraculous. I now possessed robust legal protection, an unyielding barrier that mercifully kept my family, the source of so much past pain, at a safe and permanent distance. Beyond that, I had discovered stable housing, a true sanctuary with people who genuinely cared about me, fostering an environment of warmth and acceptance I'd never known. Proper medical care, a concept once alien to me, was now a reality, provided by doctors who didn't just prescribe, but truly listened, validating my experiences and concerns. And perhaps most crucially, I was surrounded by friends who unflinchingly prioritized my safety, elevating it above anyone's fleeting feelings or misplaced loyalties. The trauma, an insidious shadow, wasn't erased, and I knew with a quiet certainty it probably never would be completely. But the suffocating sensation of being trapped, imprisoned within a house where my twin sister's capricious mood dictated whether I lived or died, that, mercifully, was gone. That particular nightmare was over. Then, one sunny Saturday morning, Jenny's mom, her presence a beacon of kindness, knocked on my door. Her words were simple yet revolutionary. We were going shopping, not for shared, borrowed, or hidden supplies, but for medical provisions that were unequivocally mine. That simple phrase, just mine, resonated with a profound liberation I hadn't realized I craved. We embarked on an expedition, driving to 3 different stores, a quest for independence. We found the perfect peak flow meter, not just functional, but in a vibrant purple, my favorite color, a small, yet significant victory of personal choice. And it wasn't just a meter, it was a comprehensive kit brimming with extra inhalers, essential spacers, various nebulizer masks, and, most symbolically, a sturdy, lockable box. This box wasn't merely for storage, it was a tangible key to my own survival, a symbol of sovereignty over my own lungs, ensuring I would never, ever have to ask permission to breathe again. Back at home, she helped me establish a personalized medical station in my room, a testament to thoughtful provision. Everything was meticulously labeled and organized, a quiet revolution in my self-care. She even bought a mini fridge, specifically for my liquid medications, repeating over and over with a gentle insistence that these things were unequivocally mine and that I should never, not once, have to beg for them. The dignity in her words, the stark contrast to past humiliations, brought tears to my eyes. And as if that weren't enough to solidify my independence and peace of mind, we got a medical alert bracelet, elegantly engraved with my conditions and emergency contacts. We also created a compact card for my wallet, outlining my personal action plan, a powerful document that conspicuously omitted any mention of needing someone else's approval, relying solely on my own informed judgment about my body. The freedom, the sheer unburdened joy of having my own medical supplies felt immeasurable, bigger than anything else I had ever experienced. It was like I could finally, truly trust that I would always possess what I needed to stay alive, without the constant, gnawing anxiety of depending on someone else's fickle permission. My asthma, a relentless antagonist for so long, was controlled for the first time since elementary school. The constant struggle of fading, distant memory. I was unequivocally safe with Jenny's family, individuals who didn't just house me, but embraced and treated me with the profound love and respect one would give a real daughter. And perhaps most astonishingly, I had even begun working on my college applications, crafting essays that bravely chronicled my journey of overcoming medical neglect and, in doing so, finally finding my own powerful voice. It turns out that when you can truly breathe freely, liberated from someone's literal hand around your throat, no longer deprived of oxygen, and metaphorically unshackled from their suffocating control, everything else becomes possible. Dreams I had never dared to imagine, aspirations I had suppressed, now burst forth, vibrant and attainable. This entire transformative journey we've shared, from the depths of despair to this blossoming of hope, has resonated with me on an incredibly deep, profound level, and I am genuinely, profoundly grateful that you've allowed me to share this space and this story with all of you. If you've made it to the very end of this narrative, please, I'd love for you to drop a comment below. I cherish and adore reading every single one of your thoughts and reflections.